Hello class. In this video, basically, I'm just going to create a summary video of best practices when 3D modeling, and here we're in SketchUp. And there will be exact videos on how to do your assignment step by step in more detail than I'm going to give in this video. But just to give an overview of what you're doing and why you're doing it, so that when you get into the details, you know sort of what's to come and the reasons behind it. So to help you along, I think it'll help you follow the directions. I wanted to give an overview of the whole process. The reason for that is, over time, people have developed a very specific way of modeling in 3D software, and we're using SketchUp. But the things I'm going to show you, some of the things will be sort of SketchUp specific because it is SketchUp, but the big concepts, they really apply to any 3D modeling software. Like the general way I'm going to show you how to model here is exactly the way people who model well in Rhino would model, if from the starting point that we have anyway. And so it's a common way. They're very useful tips, and I would encourage following you. I'll show you why those are the reasons, and I'll explain why these are the reasons in this video, and maybe why you wouldn't want to do it another way. Of course, in the end, however you get it done is however you get it done. I think that's the fundamental point. If you don't follow these steps exactly, it might take you a little longer, but you can still figure out ways to get it done. So really, this lecture is sort of about efficiency and modeling. And so we can actually see here, I've got this finalized model here up on screen, and I'll explain this. This is actually the interior stuff, and when I get to that part of the presentation, I'll talk about it. For this class, we won't actually be modeling the interior. It won't be a requirement, but nonetheless, this is a lecture portion, and at some point in time, you might need to model something on the interior, so I do want to spend some time talking about that as well. Basically, what you'll have, of course, the CAD plans and elevations already coming into this. And so what you want to do is you want to import those CAD plans and elevations. Again, it's pretty simple. Any of the technical stuff, those will be in follow-up videos, but we have them here. And the first thing you basically want to do is build what I'd call a framework around at least the first floor plan. And you're just going to use the CAD work to sort of create a basic 3D model. It's not really a 3D model, but it's a scaffolding, it's a framework about which you can model the rest of the project. And a few simple steps and you're good to go. So I'm going to show it here, even though again I will show it in the specific videos as well. So there's the first floor plan. I'm just going to move it aside. And what we need to do is we need to take each of these elevations. I think this is one file. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up the group by double clicking on it, copying one elevation out, and pasting it in. And what you're going to do is you're going to rotate these elevations up in the proper orientation. So I have the elevation. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to select it all and right click to make it a group. Generally, everything in SketchUp should be a group. That's a basic rule to follow. It could be a component. Components are special kinds of group, which I can explain a little bit as well in this video. I might talk about why things should be grouped, but it's just generally easier if everything is in a group. And if you don't know what should be a group, basically, if it's something you can put a word to, make it a group. So in this case, I can use the word elevation, I'll make it a group. If it were a window, I can use that word, make the window a group. If it's a wall, you can make that a group. And so you'll see in the videos we'll walk you through, it's more of an art than a science, but if things aren't in groups, your model will get really messy. It'll be very difficult to work. So really the number one rule of SketchUp is make everything a group. It's far better to overgroup than to undergroup. So I made that a group. That was a bit of a sign. I'm going to go to rotate this up in the plane over here. Because I'm going to go to rotate, and at first I'm going to get this blue protractor, which is only going to allow me to rotate on the bottom plane like this. When that's not what I want to do, so I'm going to have to sort of extend off of there because I want to rotate it up, right? So a lot of people are like, oh, I can only rotate like this. By default on an object like this, it's all SketchUp allows you to do, but there is a way of controlling that. So before I click a base point, what I'm actually going to do is hit my arrow on the keyboard to turn it to the red protractor. This was the right arrow. The left arrow would be green, just for demonstration purposes if I wanted to click on there. That's going to allow me to rotate this elevation perfectly straight up. And of course, I'm going to do it 90 degrees up. All right, so I've rotated up. You can see it three-dimensionally there. And I'm just going to move it into place. All right, so boom, we got it moved into place just like this. And I'm going to do this for all the elevations that I have. I'm not going to do it for in the video for all of them in this one because it'll take too long and you'll see it in the specifics. But I'm going to copy that out, paste that in. right click, make it a group. And this one is this back elevation here. So we're going to have to do a couple rotates here to make this work. So first I'm going to go rotate, put my right arrow, and to put this vertically up. But then I do have to rotate it on the blue plane 90 degrees as well to get it facing that direction, right? So I'm going to then take this and move this to that point. And you can see what I start to have here is I start to have a three-dimensional shape. If I were to have done these with these two other walls, you would see you'd have this outline of the house in 3 dimensions. In fact, over here, that's what I have. And if I turn off my drawing with the actual model, you can see that I've got all 4. In fact, I have a little surface in here to define that wall as well, which you might want to draw and move in or as well. And you can see I have moved this elevation in the middle because I was defining this plane, and you will have to move the elevations as needed. So this thing, let me turn on the model again. This wall right here is set back from this elevation. So when you go to model this, you're going to have to move it back. We'll see this in much of the demonstrations. But so if I moved it back out to this plane, you can see, there we go. There's the 3D model just based on CAD. So you want to create that infrastructure in CAD as you're moving along. Now, what I also did is I actually put most of my CAD work, you can see, on a 0 CAD layer. I like to use the word 0, so it just goes up the name alphabetically. You could call it CAD, you could call it anything else. So any of the groups I made, I put it on there. Now, but other than that, generally when you're working, I'm going to turn this model back on. What you want to work on is the default layer. Now I'm going to use the word layer, and I apologize. Literally, I got SketchUp 2020 yesterday as I'm filming this video. They no longer use the word layers in SketchUp. I don't know why, because it's a layer, and that's what every other software uses to describe such a thing. So I'll probably default to layers. They actually call them tags now. So if I say layer, I mean tags. But so generally, the tag you almost always want to work on is what's called the untagged layer. It used to be called layer 0. It's a default layer. You want to work on that. All your modeling wants to be like when you're actually modeling an object, drawing lines, making surfaces, pushing and pulling. When you make groups, the groups can be on other layers. All right. So like when I make this group, it's perfectly fine to put that on a different layer or tag. So I could go and change it from untagged to 0 CAD, right? So that's why I can toggle on and off the CAD stuff as needed, right? So we can see I didn't do that elevation, but otherwise I have done that. But the all objects themselves, otherwise, I have made them on the untagged layer. Now there are exceptions to that rule. From time to time, I might decide to put an object on it, but the reason why you want to keep everything untagged is basically related to the first rule, which is that everything should be in a group. And the thing is, in SketchUp, groups and components, they can be on layers, and so can individual objects. All right, so like this roof could be on a layer. I don't have it on a layer, but it could be on a layer, or a tag. It could be on a tag. I'm sorry, I'm just going to take forever to get used to that. So could the surface, right? That surface could also be, we can see right here, I've got it on the untagged as well. And the problem is, if I put a surface on a layer, and then I make that surface, like this roof, a part of a group, I can also put that group on a layer or a tag, and then, but it could be, I'm free to put it on a different tag or layer. And I might have, like, in a window, I might have like my frame on a tag, the whole window on a tag, which is all in the wall tag, right? Or sorry, wall group, I should say. I apologize. This new terminology is going to kill me. Let me step back here for a second. I could have the frame in a group with a tag. I could have the objects with a tag. I could have that in a group with the whole window, and I could have a whole window in a group with the wall. So I could have like 3 or 4 groups, all with different surfaces. And it's possible to have those all on different tags or different layers. And if I did that, it'd be very confusing. If I need to turn things on and off, if I turn it off on one thing, it might disappear. Or if I thought it was on this thing, I might turn it off and it would not disappear. And it's all because it's like has all these different layers or different tags because I used them on different groups. And so generally the best practices in SketchUp is to draw the core object untagged. You can generally keep things untagged unless otherwise they need to be for some reason, right? So that's generally how I work. So in the example of the CAD stuff, because I want to be able to turn on and off the scaffolding after it's modeled, like that, I have that on a layer. So I can simply go on and off just like that, right? Same with the ground. Like if I wanted to show the basement, which I do in some drawings to create exploded accents and stuff, I put that on its separate layer. Just because when I needed to do that, when I was like, oh, you know what, it would be helpful for this to be on and off, I'll go ahead and do it. But otherwise, generally always work on untagged for the core objects. If needed, groups or components can go on its own layer. I don't, these other layers in here, actually, just so you know, this is actually all from the CAD layers. Those get imported when I imported the CAD. You don't need to worry about those. They can stay as is, but that's why those other layers are there. So things are in groups. Always draw on untagged, meaning don't use the layer control for the most part. So anyway, you get the scaffolding up, and I'm gonna go back to here to this raw modeling. So those are the first two key rules. The next thing I want to sort of mention is how to go about modeling a house like this. And there's what you basically want to do is you want to do the exterior walls first, and you want to only worry about the walls. Do not worry about the doors and windows at first, and I'll show you why that's the case. And so what I'm just going to do is I'm going to trace out the floor plan. Right, again, this is efficient. I'm not going to worry about the wall, the windows and doors. I'm also not going to worry about the roof. Right now, those are all going to come in and be built in later. So I'm going to trace around just the exterior of the walls here. It's going to just take a moment to do this. And when I come back around to the start, it's going to close off the shape for me right there. We can see because it turned gray. And what I'm going to do is, I'm not worried about the interior of the house, but to give the windows and stuff some depth control, I am going to worry about the wall, exterior wall, and complete bolt on both sides of it. So I am going to give that thickness. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to trace out the inside of the wall. And I could go around some of these objects if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to sort of align it where I can get it aligned and keep going around the walls. Again, this is all just to get the shape of the walls. You're going to see what's going to happen is as soon as I finish off this shape, once I go all the way around, it is going to allow me to delete the floor area. And I'll just have the walls. There we go. So I'm all the way around. So you can see I can click inside here and delete that away, and I just have the wall left. Perfect, right? So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to simply push pull. Again, I'm not worrying about the roof. I'm going up higher than the roof, and I'm not worrying about the windows and doors. And so you made the walls. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to triple click. That's a quick way of selecting just so I can make this a group for the walls. So that's how you do all the walls. There might be other components you need to build, like a chimney out here and other such things. But for now, that's what we'll go with. And then you'll want to do your exterior doors and windows. And so to do that, this is where you're going to use your elevations. You're gonna start in this particular house. This front wall has lots of ins and out, and they're not aligned. Like this surface is the furthest. Well, this one here is the furthest in, this one over here is the furthest out. So you're going to have to move this plane wherever the window happens to be. So by default, I put it on this plane here. So I'll start on this window. Now be careful if you're working on this house. This is a trick in here. This corner is tricky because actually this is out here on the first floor, but this upper floor is actually at this level. So if you were smart, you'd go and draw a line right here now and push this surface on this upper level back into this plane. That's just a heads up tip. But nonetheless, if I want to draw a window, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click to go into this group, and you can see I can still see the CAD plan here. What I'm going to do is just use like a rectangle tool for simple rectangles. I'm not going to worry about trim right now. I'm going to do the window. So I'm going to just draw the window itself like that. All right, and I'm going to push pull this all the way through. So you can see I'm going to just push pull, and I'm going to closely sort of not overzealous push in so it goes in. And when you see the tag on face, I can click. And if you notice, what I have now is a hole in that wall. So I've created the hole for the window. You can see through it just like that. So that's the first step to do, and then I can come out of the wall group. And I would probably typically go around and make all my holes, but obviously I'm not going to do that right now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out of the group now and I'm going to just draw the rectangle again and sort of draw these rectangles. I don't have the upper frame because of the roof overhang, so I'll just estimate it. I think one of the things about 3D modeling is you don't have to be perfect. It just has to generally look right. Right? And you only have to model what you really need. So if we're not going to render the interior in this class, that's why we're not going to model it. So I'm going to push pull all this in. So it gives me the frame and the glass, and different pieces of architecture, they deal with those frames and glass differently. But I'm just going to say if I push pull this, and this is just going to be basically a surface here. I can push, I don't know, I'll go with 6 inches here. I don't know what I said in the video, but I'll push pull it in 6 inches, and then I'll push pull this in. Let's see, I'll push this in. I'll go with 4 inches on that surface, and that's the back surface. I might have to delete this front surface here, actually, in this case, and there we go. So now there we go. That's how you basically just rebuild it in here. And I could actually take all this window stuff and make it a group as well. I may have done it oops, I accidentally selected that stuff in the background. So let me undo that. There we go. That's what you do. So you make the walls completely, you punch the holes, and then you make the windows. And the same is true with doors. And I can go, maybe I'll show one more. I might have done the steps slightly different in the videos. It doesn't matter ultimately, but the basic steps is that make the walls complete, make the holes, then make the windows. All right. And so the thing you want to notice, as I mentioned before, since this is a different planes, let's say we want to put the windows here, I have to move the CAD elevation, right? So I have to sort of come in here, I can just select a surface and move this back to here. So now I can draw on this surface here, and I can do the same thing. I can double click in here, I can draw the outline, and this isn't a rectangle, so I can't use the rectangle tool on it. But I can draw all the way around. Oops, I think because I got stopped, it's sometimes hard to see what lines I may or may not have hit. I think there we go. I can push the hole in so you can see I've got the hole there. I can come out, and then I could redraw the window. I think an easier way, I'm just sort of thinking, I don't know why I didn't draw this here, and then I don't want to take too much time on this because it's just repeating myself. But so I'll just do, sort of that window and that window, and I making the dimensions the same there so they match all over there. And then I could come back and I could add the trim either. I should make this a group, of course. I'm not finished with it, but I'll make it a group. I can go and add the trim here, or I can add the trim on the walls. It doesn't matter. You'll follow what I did in the video. I don't remember at this point, but the point being basically walls all the way up, punch the windows and the doors in later. All right, now one of the things I want to step back and talk about is the fact that we got gray and white, and this is an important concept and SketchUp too. SketchUp sort of allows you to work where the gray is the inside surface and the white as the outside surface. So I could have built this house without double thick line walls, but I didn't want to because of windows and other such things. If we wanted to use this model, I also find it very easy to use this process this way. So that's what I did. Usually SketchUp is pretty good about it. The inside faces of my wall, the gray surfaces, are now on the inside, right? So, but the reason why SketchUp allows that is if I only had one plane for the outside wall, I could have painted this like siding, and I could have painted the inside surface, a paint color or something like that. If that's how I wanted to model. That's without a double planed wall like I have here. Since I have a double planed wall, I want to make sure all my surfaces are white. All right, and usually I'll go and apply materials at the end, but I want to make sure all my surfaces are white. So I need to go and fix these planes. I'm going to open these groups, select it all, and reverse faces. And the reason why you want to do that is because SketchUp is usually pretty good about getting this right. If not, you fix it. The problem is when you get into plugins and other things like I think Enscape, which is what we're going to use, is pretty good about it now. But like it used to be, if you had the wrong surface out, the rendering would just get all wonky because the plugin renderer wouldn't know what to do with that surface. It's a reverse surface. It doesn't know what to do with it. So you want to make sure all your surfaces are white, they're front face before you apply the materials. So you would do that. Anyway, you'd go around, you sort of model the whole house just like this. Let me show you what would happen. This is what a lot of people do and why I don't recommend doing it. So do not do it this way. But let me just copy the plan out and I will show you what to do. What a lot of people do is they'll come in and say, "Oh, there's a window. I'm going to start here. And I'm going to model around. I'm not going to do the whole house here." And they're just going to trace around where there's actual wall, just like that. So there's an actual piece of wall here because there's a window and here's a window, and then they'll come and they'll extrude this up. All right, so I don't know how high, but we'll go there, and then they'll go like here and they'll do this piece and they'll trace this out, and they could go to the interior as well. I'm just not going to here, and oh, then here's another window or door, so I will end there and come back around here, and push pull that up, and then so they have their window opening here, and they would do the same. I'm not going to keep going, but they would then do just this piece, and they would do just that little corner piece, and so on and so forth. And you could do it this way, right? The problem is you can see what you have here is you have these openings that go all the way up to the top, and so you can model this back in, but what you would essentially have to do is you have to come back in and then put in the sill. So I'd have to put in a piece here, and I don't have the elevation here. I guess it's right here, so I can sort of push pull to that if I wanted to. So I've got that. Well, now this is a reverse faces, so I'm gonna select these and inverse the faces, reverse faces. And then, but when I got these extra lines, so now I have to come and delete these lines here and here. And yep, they're on the inside too, so I got to scroll around and delete those and those. And then you know what? Well, now I got the window. Well, now I have to draw another plane here because I guess I got the top of the window here somewhere, and I could have drawn it over. Or if I had the elevation here, I obviously could draw it right on it. Well, that's a plane there. I guess what I can do is I can come in and draw the head, perhaps, or maybe I'll have to draw around not with a rectangle. I'll have to just use my line tool, come around. Okay, there we go there. Well, now it filled in the window itself, so I got to delete that piece. Get this deleted away, and then I got to fill in the rest of this wall now. Okay, there we go. Oh, wait. Oh, actually, now I got these extra lines I've got to delete. Okay, let me delete these extra lines. Up there probably won't matter. Won't ignore those, but yep, they're on the inside, so I gotta do that. So there we go. Oh yeah, I got my window hole now. Obviously, I'm being a bit sarcastic, but you can see how long it took me to make that hole versus the one that took me to make this. It took me longer to make these pieces of walls than it took me to make probably this whole wall, and it took me much longer to make this one window cut out than it did over here. So could you do it that way? Yes, but the reason why I had you do it this way is because it's just much quicker, much less work, right? So you draw all the walls, then you punch the holes, then you draw the windows. That's sort of a pro tip. And that's why I also didn't worry about the roof, because the roof is sort of done very similarly, where you let the walls come up and then you cut the walls for the roof, no matter what shape. I'm going to do it on the shed roof here, but a peak roof or whatever, this is often a very easy way of doing it. So what I'm going to do now is it's going to be a slightly different process, like the actual technical pieces of it, but the concept is the same. Which is to draw the walls and then cut for the roof. So I'm going to draw the roof out. That's how I'm going to start. I'm going to draw it out here to here, here, there. So I just drew it in elevation. I'm going to push pull it to its right location in sort of forward and backwards here. So I'm going to come out. I can use this elevation if I have it set in the right spot. Let's see, where is it? It's actually, this roof comes to here. This is tricky. This is part of the trick on this house. I can push pull it all the way this way. You can see I'm just using the elevation to pull it out. Now, obviously the roof wants to overhang the wall, right? So it does on this side. On this side, it doesn't look like it's doing it, and that's only because this piece has a flat roof on it, and this piece ends down here. We can see the roof is down here. So really, it would be back here. So just to cheat for this part of the assignments, I'm actually going to pull the roof out because I'm not worried about the super detail of this particular house. I just want to, so conceptually what what you do is you'd make the roof wider than the house, all the walls, as typically would always be the case. Now I'm going to make this a group just because I know it's a roof, so I'm going to make it a group and make it pretty easy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come inside my wall group and sort of select everything. I triple clicked on it. And I'm going to right click and say intersect faces with model. So that's how you do it in SketchUp, but really any software usually has some sort of Boolean operation, as they're called, where I can cut objects apart based on another object. And if I were to just quickly just demonstrate this, if I were to sort of delete my roof, you can see what has happened. And actually, let me delete the CAD as well. You can see it's cut the roof right onto that surface. And all I need to do is, I'm going to undelete those things. All I need to do is come into the walls and delete those top parts of the wall away. They'll cut right at that surface there, right? And so just like that, the reality is sometimes you have to come in and zoom in and get the little pieces close. And if I didn't want these lines, I could either hide those lines or delete them to the next level, or just paint them in material, depending on what you're doing. Or if you're never going to see the roof more than just that, it doesn't even matter. But nonetheless, that's how you sort of make the roof. Again, there's always going to be corrections that need to happen, like this piece here actually needs to stick up to here. And so I can come back in and rebuild that on top of it as needed. But in general, you have the walls go up, then you cut them to build the roof in between. And that's sort of a smart way of working. You can already see, I mean, I've been talking a lot, so it's been taking me a long time in telling you what to do and what not to do. But you can see it already has the quick surface of the model. It's already coming along pretty well. And I will do another set of videos and other weekly assignments on materials, so I'm not going to get into that today. But I do want to talk about the interior, even though you won't necessarily be doing interior for this project. And so what I've done is, the interior is inside this model as well. Let me turn off the CAD layer here, or tag as they now call it, so we can just see the model. There's actually interior components here. If I sort of look in the window, you can see them. All right, you can see the kitchen, you can see interior walls. I didn't spend too much time over detailing anything, but you can see through it. You can see it. Now, to build inside this house in most 3D modeling software, it's a bit difficult to like go in and like draw. It's like, oh, I can come in, but then I'm so tight in here that it's just really difficult to model, right? And so one thing to do is just have the CAD floor plans out here and just model right on top of them. I modeled the floor, I pulled it up, and then I modeled the interior walls. Did the interior walls exactly like the exterior walls. So before I drew any doors, it was a solid surface, right? And then I cut the hole for the door. And in this case, I didn't put in any doors. I didn't actually model any doors. I just left the hole for the doors. So you'd see openings when I would do axons or section perspectives, as I'll show in another presentation. But I just modeled it pretty simple modeling, all right? So I modeled it out here, but here's the trick. This is not a group, it's actually a component. And the reason why components are very much like groups, the one difference with components and groups is that a group is an individual object, even if I copy it, and a component is linked with itself if I copy it. So let me show you what I mean by that, just as a demonstration purposes. Let me just draw a cube over here, okay? Just over here off to the side. I'm just going to make this a group. Okay, and I'm going to copy it. If you don't know how to copy, it's move with control. That's how you do it in SketchUp. And so if I come to the second group here, and let me just push-pull this thing, we can see it push-pulls just fine. Okay, this is still a group, and this is a group. They're independent, even though I copied it. But let me show component now, which is very similar. So I'm going to push-pull this up, just make a new one. I'm going to select it all and right click. Instead of saying make group, I'm going to make component. It's going to ask me for a name. If you want to put a name, you can. Usually I just say create. I'll talk about some of those things, really settings here in a moment, just because they're interesting. This time I'm also going to copy it, right? So now I've got what looks like two groups, but they're components. I'm going to double click on this to edit it, and I'm going to push-pull this one. But watch what happens. They both move. They both change, right? So that's the difference between group and component. Group is, they're both groups, but editing makes them independent. When they're a component, you edit one, you edit the other. All right, and there is a way of disassociating that edit should you need to, but in this purpose, we're going to use that to our advantage. So the reason why I have this interior stuff over here is because I modeled it over here to make it easy to model, and then I made it a component. Once it was a component, I copied it and moved it into place over here. And the reason for that is, let's say I wanted to change something. Let's say I had to work on the kitchen. Well, it's really difficult to work on the kitchen over here. Maybe I want to close off this room more, not make it so open, right? Well, what I can do is I can come in here and I can open that group and I can just remodel. Maybe I'm going to make it a regular door. So I'm going to come in here and let's close this off maybe, just sort of drawing. I could push pull that as I probably should, but just for demonstration purposes, because I'm not going to save this. There we go. Now I've turned that wall into a doorway, right? And so it would be updated because this is a component. It would be updated in here. I'm sure you can sort of see that. If you can't, I'm going to show you something silly just to sort of prove my point. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to open this. I'm going to start editing this wall right here. Actually, I'm going to just push pull. Oops, I jumped out of the group there. I'm just going to push pull right here. I'm just going to push pull it super high. Whoop, there it is. See, you can see it is editing it on here. So sort of that's another pro tip, if you will, for 3D modeling is model your interior off to the side, make a component or wherever the software allows you to edit it, copy it in so I can do all my edits over here, knowing that they also change on the interior of the building. Of course, I'm going to undo that. That just looks super silly. So, so that's how you would do the interior stuff. I think just sort of one last quick modeling stuff just to mention at this point in time. I'm going to just push pull an object over here. I'm going to make component one more time. Again, usually I might not name things, but one of the interesting things about SketchUp that you might play with, it's very useful for trees. And if you download trees or if you want to make your own trees, is always face camera. Checked on. You wouldn't do this for the interior, but if I did always face camera, you can see no matter how I turn, that block is always facing me sort of on the XY plane. If I can move up and see the top, it won't rotate in that direction, but it does rotate all the way around. So you can make like flat trees that look really nice because they're like an image, and they always look full because they're always facing you. So there's a fun little trick too, in case if you didn't know about it. It's not sort of relevant to this video, but I thought I would like to show it. So in summary, what you're going to do is, when you're modeling, you're going to bring in the CAD, you're going to make it scaffolding. You're basically going to draw everything on the default layer or default tag, which is now called untagged. You're going to basically make everything a group or a component. You're going to start by building all the walls. After the walls are made, you're going to then punch the windows and doors, and then you're going to cut for the roof. And that is, again, basically the process of how you would 3D model, no matter what 3D modeling you're working on. And I'm going to have you, for this assignment, certainly model the entire building, exterior-wise, because that's good practice. But I should mention, and I have done this before, like if I'm told and if I know I want to make this perspective, I'm not going to model these two faces. Why spend the time doing it if I don't need them? Right? Now we're going to look and potentially make animations and stuff at the end of the semester where you'll want all faces. And I want you to practice using SketchUp, so that's a reason enough to do it for this assignment. But I should mention, like, again, if it's not exactly 100%, as long as it looks close enough, that's good. Don't be afraid to do it differently than the exact way I have done it, as long as you follow the core principles. And usually, if you're modeling, model what you need to. And again, we'll follow this up with other content about materials and lighting and rendering and all this stuff. But those are your basic concepts of best practices for 3D modeling. Good luck.